Hey, what's up guys? My name is Patrick Adair, and in today's video we're going to be making a ring out of Damascus Steel. And this is going to be one of my glowstone rings that I do. So we're going to be using all these different glow powders here. We're going to go with a black base and then use these three different colors here. This is what I call deep space. It kind of, at the end, you'll see how it looks, but we do the black and that's just kind of the background. And then we swirl in these three different colors, try to get a lot of cool different colors showing up. And then the black, that just kind of neutralizes everything. And then we put in these three different materials. We have meteorite fragments right here, malachite, which adds a really nice, really bright green color to it, so that helps it stand out. And then we have our amethyst. And this is really cool because it's kind of a darker purple color and it's also translucent. And so that gives the ring a lot of different depth. And so between all the materials we've got here, that inlay, it turns out looking really nice. It's one of my all-time favorite things to do as an inlay in a ring. And then the twist Damascus, this is really cool. It just looks like wood grain is kind of the idea here. So without any further ado, let's just go ahead and get right into it. So as I do with most rings that I make out of round bar stock, we're going to be cutting off a slice with the metal bandsaw I've got here. And there's a few materials where I'd want to make an exception for this, but Damascus steel is one that's pretty straightforward, so I just cut off the slice here. If you didn't know, metal bandsaws, they're pretty similar to just a typical wooden bandsaw, but they go a lot slower with a lot more torque, and so they're able to cut away through a much harder material. And then once we've got our disc, we need to cut a hole into it and even everything out. So I'm using this center drill here to just go all the way through. I get a lot of comments asking why I don't switch back over to a drill bit after I get the point made with the center drill. And that's just because I'm cutting through material thin enough that it's not really worth my time. Then after I get that initial hole made, I'm able to go in with my boring bar and start to widen that hole. And you can see I'm using a bigger boring bar here. I couldn't find my little one. So you can see I'm doing this kind of weird technique where I just cut a little bit away. That gives me room to cut a little bit more away, and then I have to go back and forth. So that's why I'm doing such a weird boring technique right here at the beginning. That's because the whole boring bar wouldn't fit all the way through initially. Now we've got the hole bored out enough so that it can fit onto this expanding ring mandrel. If you didn't know, I sell these on my supplies website, patrickadairsupplies.com. It's basically just a stepped ring mandrel, and then it's got flexible tines on the end, and so when you tighten down the screw in the middle, it causes those tines to expand, and then it securely holds the ring on the lathe. So now I'm quickly squaring everything up. You see I trim both of the edges, and then I trim down the outer diameter to the final diameter that we want for this particular ring size. And you'll notice that the ring still looks really thick, and that's because, like I said earlier, the inner diameter isn't the final size we want. The reason I didn't hollow it out all the way in the first place is because I wanted it to have a little bit more strength while we do some of the more machining processes to it. Now that we've got the outer diameter ready to go, I put the bevels onto the ring, and I really like bevels on Damascus steel rings because for every angle and different edge you have on it, you expose a whole different version of the pattern, and so it can be really interesting just to have as many bevels as you can. And so I tried to make the bevels as big as I could just to give us all those different surfaces to look at. Now I'm switching the ring back over into the lathe jaws, and we're going to continue to hollow it out. And you can see once I get close to that final diameter, I stop every few passes to just check the dimensions on it, make sure I'm not overdoing it, and I just carefully zero in on the exact dimensions that we want. Now that I've got the inner diameter how I want it, I use the Dremel here and I just round off those edges. That gives it a nice comfort fit. That way it'll slide on and off your finger a lot better and just be a lot more comfortable to wear in general. And now we're going back over to the ring mandrel and we're cutting the groove into the ring. This is where we're going to inlay our glowstone materials. And so you can see I just switch back and forth between my left hand and right hand cutters just to carve that channel in there. Now that I've got the left and right side down like I need them, we still have this ridge in the middle, so you see I go back to this flat cutting bit. And it's not super sharp, these are fairly cheap, but the idea is that they just flatten this out and this is going to be completely covered with our glow inlay. So that's totally fine. We're not worried about the finish on the inside here. Okay, so we're finished with the groove, and our next step is going to be inlaying our glowstone. So I'm going with a deep space glowstone theme here. This is just a color scheme that I really like, one that I think looks really well on a lot of different colors of materials as well as different textures and things like that. It's just a very interesting inlay. All the different colors and materials like the meteorite and malachite and amethyst we put in it, they make it very interesting to look at, and the different colors really helps everything stand out so you can see all the teeny little details in there. But one of the most important things about this design, in my opinion, is that the majority of the colors that we have here is just this black, and that keeps everything subtle. I think it'd be just a little bit over the top if we just had straight up just color everywhere here, and especially for this design, it's not like we have a particular theme going on here. We've got purple, green, and blue, which are colors that don't necessarily coordinate very well, so that black just tones everything down a little bit, and I think overall the ring looks a lot better because of it. So now that we've got all the inlay in place, we're ready to start sanding it down. So I'm going to be using a Dremel here. I've got a 60 grit drum on here, and that's a very rough drum. I use this just for the bulk sanding. I get rid of most of the material here, but I am careful. I don't really want to scratch the surface of this. Any scratches left by this are quite tricky to get out. It's definitely doable, it just takes a lot of time with sanding and you gotta go through all the different grits to polish it up. So I do my best to avoid the surface of the metal, and then I switch over to a less coarse drum. I switch over to 120 grit. And then once we get that almost all the way down, you can see I still have a few bumps where I've got those inlay pieces, and that's because those are a lot harder than our glow powder. So I've got the amethyst as well as that malachite, they're just sticking up a little bit. And so to shave these down, I'm using a diamond wheel, and this is able to just chew through them really quick. It can overheat the materials, and it can ruin the CA glue surrounding the piece, and that could make it fall out easier. So I do need to be careful not to overheat anything. And then another thing I'll mention is because we need to etch this ring in acid, we need to protect our inlay pieces. And we especially need to protect the malachite. The malachite will actually dissolve in certain acids, including the one that we're going to be using. And that's because it's a mineral based on copper, and a lot of these are designed for etching metals. So if we don't seal this off perfectly, that malachite will be just completely gone when we pull it out of the acid. So I'm very careful to make sure everything's sanded down below the surface of the metal. And then once I'm done with that, I polish everything up, and then I do another layer of CA adhesive. That will coat all of our minerals and protect them from the acid. And then after I'm done with that, of course I polish that up again, and then we're left with what looks like a really nice stainless steel ring, but we can't tell that it's Damascus steel yet. So now we need to switch over, dunk this in acid, and get that pattern to show up. And when I do this, I'm very careful to make sure I'm wearing protective eyeglasses, as well as I have a cup of baking soda water on hand in case any of this spills or I get it on me. That's a really quick way to neutralize any of it. And now after about 30 minutes of etching, you can see this pattern, and I think it looks amazing. It's really cool. I love just that standard twist Damascus. I of course love all the other fancy patterns that Vegas Forge does, but this twist Damascus, it's just the classic. It's that wood grain look that's just crazy. It looks like wood, but it's also metal, and then there's just so much texture to it, but it's still not polished. So we need to go over to our polishing wheel, and we start over on the left. This is a medium polish. This smooths everything out, gets rid of any residual imperfections, and then we switch over to our right where we've got our green polish. This is a high polish. This will get it up to a really nice glossy finish. And now the ring is finished, and I just think it turned out so good. These Damascus steel rings, like I've said many times before, are just so rewarding to make. You put a lot of work into them, you throw them in the acid, which is always still to this day, it's a little nerve-wracking just chucking it in there. You never know what might go wrong. Then you pull it out, you polish it up, and you're just left with an amazing looking ring that looked nothing like it did an hour before that. But anyways guys, I just want to thank you all for watching this video. If you're interested in buying rings like this, I've actually got this one listed on my website as well as many others like it. I do a lot of Damascus steel rings as well as a lot of just other crazy exotic materials. We do meteorite, superconductor, all of that. So you can check that out, link to that down in the description. And then like I mentioned earlier, I also have a supplies website, so if you're interested in making rings like I do, you can check that out. And then of course subscribe to my channel if you're not already. I post 1 to 2 videos a week, usually doing a ring project, but just anything that I think would be really cool and that I want to share with you guys. And if you're really looking to go the extra mile today, you can head over to my Instagram. That's where I post a lot of my giveaways, I do discount codes to my websites, things like that, and it's just behind the scenes of my company in general. So be sure to follow me there. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.